Do we ever look back at history and see where the lessons might be? Do we ever take time to actually reflect on things that have happened in the past and how they might come back to haunt us in the future? I used to think that unless you were at least LOS, let's say 15 to 17, and you didn't experience the absolute horror of the period of 2007 and 2008 going into 2009, that you probably have no baseline from which to consider what happens when it all goes bad fast. I'm not saying that's about to happen. What I am stating is that there is a process that you can put in place that even when that does happen will allow you to not only come out smelling great, but with more money to reinvest than you can possibly imagine because you avoided most of the damage. Let me take you through a brief example. This was an actual client whose money I put to work in 2003. I did a financial plan using, at the time, I believe, one of the financial planning tools that an unnamed firm would supply. And it calculated out that this client, to hit their goals, needed a 6.3% constant rate of return. Their goal was by 2020, they wanted to have over $11 million. And as you can see on the screen that we're looking at here, you can see that they made that with a 6.3% rate of return. That correlated, by the way, to their risk profile. More importantly, it correlated to utilizing a 50-50 blend, assuming equities would make somewhere around 8.5, bonds would average somewhere around half that. 6.3% was what I posted as the expected rate of return. Straight line, so far so good. As we know, nothing goes in a straight line. So what actually happens? Well, right out of the gate, they've got a phenomenal return. You can see 28.68. I'm using TLT as a bond proxy here. It's the constant maturity 20-year ETF. So it reflects what interest rates are doing. So we can see from 12/31/03 right up until the time we get down to 12/31/07, without rebalancing, all of a sudden this thing went from 50-50 to about 58% equities and about 42% debt. Now, the interesting thing here was, check out the total value. Pretty good, 633. The problem is, now I get hit here, minus 37% in '08. My equities go down from 3.6 to 2.3, essentially losing a third of their value. Now, since I had bonds in place and bonds did okay, total return here was minus 7.09. 39.15 was my new equity allocation, down from 57, and now I'm 60% debt. So essentially, I put it to work, left it alone, and just hoped for the best. So there was no annual rebalancing. I just let it run. And as you can see at the end, it all came out pretty well. As of, assuming this portfolio is still in action, as of today, this portfolio is over $24 million. Why? Because we had outstanding performance in the S&P over time. One thing to look at, though, if we look at our average rate of return for the S&P, it was higher than we anticipated. Bonds were higher than we anticipated. 24 million and change. The thing you have to ask yourself is, if you were in business at that point in time, how many clients hung in through this? Up 5, down 37. Well, the answer is, looking at the Dalbar study, not many. Any client that was using mutual funds hit the bricks and ran away. Now, let's assume we rebalanced it back to 50-50 because that's the initial asset allocation. And how did that come out? Well, that came out a little bit better. We didn't have as much volatility in the portfolio overall. You can see in that horrible year of 2008, because we were rebalancing, we were only at minus 1.62 for a total rate of return. It means we had more money working for longer periods of time. But what we really want to get to is this. If we look at these early years and we notice what this portfolio was doing, the client walked in the door with $4 million. Had I reconfigured this asset allocation to get to a 6.3% return from any of these numbers after they invested, I wouldn't have needed 6.3%. In any case, I could have gotten away with a lot less, which means lower risk, lower volatility, and I'm still getting the client where they want to go. So again, here's our 50-50 portfolio. That ends up nicely. 1071 average rate of return, 24,768 finishing value as of today. However, there is a better way to do this. Sometimes it's called Goal mapping, sometimes it's called the A to B process. And here's how it looks. If you make believe that that client walked into your door a year later with 4.6 million instead of 4 million, they had 16 years left to get there, what rate of return would they have needed with 4.6 million to get where they needed to go? Well, they only would have needed 3.7%. Why? Because they're coming in with substantially more money than they did at first. You can pick any point in the plot and figure out what you need to do to get them where they need to go. You can see this client didn't really need more than 3.7 the entire way through. Now, at that point, 3.7% return would represent almost no equities. However, I then go back to how markets are negatively correlated, and I will never go below a 35% equity return. That is my baseline return. Had this client come in with 4.6 million, I would have recommended a 35-65 and rebalanced back each year. So what happened here was this. Each and every year, no matter what the performance was, I rebalanced back to 35-65. Not going to go below that. Look at how it comes out. On 12/20/21, even with a crappy bond market so far this year, client has 25,324,222. What's really cool about this is it was actually a lower annual average return than I earned here, rebalancing back to 50-50. Why? Because getting to 65-35 allowed me to keep the majority of the money away from the equity volatility that ensued following the 2008 meltdown. Following this approach, which you need to use only if you're prepared to replot the client's needed rate of return between now and the goal and allocate those assets accordingly. If you're willing to do that, not only will you have dramatically less volatility, you'll have a lower average number, however, a higher overall rate of return. Why? Money-weighted rate of return you can spend. Time-weighted rate of return you can't. So here, a value increase over the life of managing that portfolio of $555,000. That's not bad. Now, if you think what's going on right now is different, and you haven't computed the arithmetic of recovering from a loss in the equity market, and you're just sitting there staring at it because your clients are saying, hey, maybe we should wait and see what happens, or maybe it's going to come back, or we've been doing so well, blah, blah, blah. Here's the bottom line. For the past 5 years, equities have averaged over 17% per year, including the recent volatility we have right now, including one negative year. If the long-term performance on the S&P as far back as we can go is somewhere around 11%, do you think the next move on equities is higher or back and reverting to the mean? Guys, if you're just staring at the portfolios your clients have and you're listening to them tell you, yeah, we've been doing so well, let's stay where we are, and you're going, yeah, that's kind of okay, you're not an advisor, you're an order taker. If you're going to truly do this job, it means you've got to tell the clients not just what they want to hear, you have to tell them what they need to know. Educate them as to how difficult it is to come back from any decline in equity value. Up 20% in the equity market, followed by down 20% in the equity market, and then up 20% the following year, you're still underwater. These are the conversations you have to mitigate risk for the money your clients are entrusting to you. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, go hit the other video where I expand on the A to B process a little bit more thoroughly. I'll leave you with one thought. Planning is a verb. It is not something you run once and hope it all works out. You should replot your average rate of return necessary to hit the goals each and every year. That will dictate the most appropriate asset allocation for that client. Give them the lowest volatility with the highest degree or probability of success. I'll be posting more on this on the Video Vault probably over the next few days. If you're not a subscriber yet, please do. This stuff's free, and it's good. Talk to you soon.